This video topic was decided by my lovely patrons. Go down to patreon.com/mander and sign up for as little as $1 a month to be able to periodically vote to decide video topics. Alright, let's get to the video. Warhammer 40k is a game with a lot of factions. Like, a lot of factions. 26 to be precise. And not all of them get equal attention, especially with 7 of those 26 factions getting an outsized amount of attention already. However, among those most forgotten happen to be 40k's colorful cast of alien races. The Imperium wages war to conquer and lay waste to the entire galaxy. The forces of chaos wage war to eat the souls of every sapient being within the galaxy. And the Xenos just want a grill, for God's sake. Generally speaking, Xenos are some of the last factions to get models, which means there's a fair few Xenos factions that are simply lacking in meaningful options. And that is what today's video is about. I want to present to you a list of units I think should be added to the 8 different Xenos factions that call the 41st Millennium home. These are more rough concepts based upon issues with the codex that I personally diagnose, so it's all very subjective and very much open to contemplation and argumentation. So if you have your own thoughts on units that could be added to the various codices to spice up these armies, leave them in the comments below.
We are shaped by fate just as we shape it.
Codex Eldari is a composite codex of 2 major factions, the Craftworld Eldar and the Harlequins. And the Craftworld Eldar are fine. In fact, I'd say that the Craftworld Eldar side of the army is one of the most well-designed armies in the entire game, and also far and away the most powerful in this current version of the game, by way of this little Wraith Knight guy and how you can take 3 of them. But it's the Harlequins who are downright dysfunctional, which is a funny little inverse of the way things worked last edition. They were fine in 9th edition. In fact, they were quite good in 9th edition, but they lost a significant portion of their bite in 10th edition because, honestly, you need to have weapons that have a strength higher than 10. Eldar have one weapon that has a strength score higher than 10, and it's the focused profile of the prismatic cannon on the Voidweaver. Nothing else has strength higher than 10. Nothing has a good anti-vehicle stat, and the only thing that has the Melta feature is a fucking pistol. These guys are begging for some ranged anti-tank, so I say give it to them. Give them something that can actually meaningfully deal with vehicles. I'm thinking an infantry unit with fusion guns that have something akin to the fire and fade special rule from the Phobos Lieutenant. So they can run in, nuke a vehicle with melta rifles, and then activate fire and fade to get the fuck out of Dodge before they get shot to death. Every army in 10th edition needs something in mind to be able to deal with vehicles, and as it stands, Harlequins have nothing. This effectively makes them unplayable as an army, because the moment the enemy plops a Land Raider, or a Baneblade, or a Knight onto the table, you're screwed. And then, hey, maybe also give them some kind of leader unit that they can follow around that has like a fire pike. Call them like actually useful death jesters or something.
There is business to be done!
The Dark Eldar are a slavering bunch of slavers who do a big enslavement, and that's their whole thing. Their economy, their society, their way of life is built entirely around the gaining, trading, and then torturing of slaves. These slaves also fulfill a very vital and important role within Comorite society beyond simply being torture fuck slaves, because they also exist to do all of the manual labor required for the daily maintenance of Dark Eldar society. as their masters basically live a life of constant decadence and entertainment. and thus don't really have time or desire to work in the mines. So, with that being said, why do we never see any of those slaves? In Total War Warhammer 3, Chaos Dwarfs can actually field Orc Laborers as a unit. Because you see, Chaos Dwarfs are kind of the same way. Their economy relies upon slave labor, and so when the treasury's a little tight and you can't afford a huge amount of mercenaries, chain ganging your green-skinned slaves into service as meat shields isn't too bad of an economic idea. I want Dark Eldar to have a similar unit. It doesn't have to be orcs. In fact, the Dark Eldar source their slaves from every race in the galaxy, including themselves. But I think Dark Eldar would benefit a lot from having some kind of shitty meat shield unit. Give them sticky objectives, have them stand on the objective in your deployment zone for a turn, and then send them out to go die while they screen for your incubi or something.
Humanity has always looked to the stars for enlightenment. And at last, the stars have answered!
Okay, Genestealer Cult is going to go by fast because, honestly, this codex is quite good. But, did you know that Genestealers can actually infect anything? It's not just humans. Baseline humans are not the only ones who can be infected. It can be literally any, living creature. So, again, just like with Dark Eldar, let us see that on the tabletop, please. Give us, I don't know, Space Marine hybrids, like Possessed, but for Genestealer cults. I mean, frankly, Genestealer cults could also really use a unit that doesn't just die as soon as you look at it a little crooked. Space Marine hybrids would give Genestealer cults a unit that can more effectively fight for control of the middle of the board, would represent an element of their lore that often goes unrepresented, and would also give GW an excuse to release another Space Marine model.
I awaken, and the galaxy falls silent.
See, Necrons are another army that I'm a bit stumped by, because honestly, I don't think they need anything. Ever since 9th edition, they kind of have everything I'd want them to have. A lot of people say they want pariahs back, but frankly, I think pariahs are a little dumb. I mean, pariahs are literally just humans who've been servitorized by the Necrons, except Necrons are already essentially an entire race of servitors. Why would they need more servitors, and why would they acquire them by abducting humans? Nothing in that process makes any sense. However, I do like the idea of having an anti-psyker Necron unit, so how about we take the concept of pariahs, maybe even the name, and give it to a Catan unit. The Catan Pariahs would be a 5-man squad of very tiny Catan shards that are then put inside living metal vessels. The Catan, the enslaved gods of the Necron Empire, are one of the most fascinating elements of their lore, but they're also restricted to just being these big, stupid centerpiece models, which look radical, don't get me wrong, but if I wanted to make a more Catan-themed army, I can't exactly just run 3 max copies of every Catan unit, because that'd just be a really shitty monster mash list. So, take pariahs, and make them a Catan unit. Give them war scythes that have anti-psyker 2-up or something, and make them hit good. Bam, new unit. I don't know how necessary it'd be. It's not like Necrons are in any way like a dysfunctional army right now. In fact, they're quite good, but I will admit that visually speaking, their range lacks some dynamism that I think having more unique looking infantry level squads might change. Orcs are another very quite good codex in terms of having a lot of options. They're up there with the oldest armies in the entire game, and they've had 30 years of slow but steady additions to their codex, among the most recent being the introduction of the Beast Snaga units. However, You know what Beast Snagas lack? Def Dreads. Now, the reason why they don't have Def Dreads is because Beast Snagas typically shun more advanced Orcish technology in favor of the old ways, which makes them very common among the Snakebites, but not exclusive to the Snakebites. And I'd imagine that the Bad Moons and their constant need to make things more explodey and more boomy with all that extra teeth they have would eventually decide that maybe Def Dreads can be enhanced through an adherence to the old ways, thus bringing the Beast Buster Def Dread. A Def Dread that turns in its multiple arms with multiple weapons for one really big spear for the purposes of hunting big game. After all, if you want to hunt the biggest game, you gotta become the biggest game.
In Tau, I am strong.
The Tau are one of my favorite armies to play on the tabletop, but have, in my opinion, two major core issues. They are an absolute one-phase army, and they do not represent a certain very critical aspect of their lore on the tabletop. And both of these issues could be solved very simply by adding more auxiliary units. One of the key elements of the Tau Empire from a lore perspective is that their military recruits from all of the different client races from within its federation. And there are also dozens of client races within the bounds of the Empire. The only problem is that the only client races we have represented on the tabletop are Kroot and Vespids, which sucks because there's so many client species within the Tau Empire who you could draw on for some really sick units. Thraxians are described as being large bipedal roach things with multiple arms and covered in chitinous armor, and serve the Tau military in close combat and melee roles. Being able to field some of those would be objectively sick and would make the Tau be able to meaningfully act in the fight phase. The Galg are literally just writhing masses of tentacles with a bulbous head. The Nikathar are the first race to join the Tau Empire properly and are also Psyker polar bears. There's so many things you could pull on, and frankly, I'd also have them rewrite the lore of other established minor Xenos species to have them be part of the Tau Empire. The most notable example being the Zotes. The current lore for the Zotes is that they're a biologically engineered slave race of the Tyranids who keep them around so they can act as diplomats. The Tyranids apparently need diplomats. That's stupid. We already have a Zote model from Blackstone Fortress, make 4 more of them, and then suddenly the Tau have beefy centauroid lizards with power fists running around smacking things. That's so cool! Why do we not have this? There's mountains of potential there that just goes untapped for no reason. We already have enough battle suits. Give us some sick fucking aliens. The Tyranids have always struggled, but never for a lack of units. They've struggled because the models they do have stuck around a really insanely long time. If you asked me before Leviathan, I would have said that they should add Von Ryan's Leapers and the Screamer Killer Carnifex, and they did both of those things. So, you know, kind of ruined this whole bit, GW. Please stop being even mildly competent. However, what I can say is that whatever units I would have said they should add, the Neurogaunt would not have been one of them. Seriously, what the hell is this thing? Whatever, I have to come up with something. I don't know. Okay. Remember the idea I had for Genestealer Cults, where I said they should have Space Marine hybrids? make a pure strain Genestealer Astartes unit. Make them bulkier Genestealers that have thicker chitinous armor that kind of vaguely looks like Space Marine power armor, and give them bio-bolters or something. Okay, cool. Moving on.
I wasted on cross-country. We dwarves are natural sprinters. Very dangerous over short distances.
Last, but certainly not least, are the Leagues of Votan, the newest Xenos species to be added to the game. I think Votan are incredibly well designed. They have a very small roster of units, but each unit contributes a whole ton to the codex, and you're generally going to be taking a bit of everything. So really, I don't think the Votan need as many new units as a lot of other people claim they do. Their roster of HQs is good. I just think they need like a couple more battle line style units and then they'll be set. However, I have an idea. If you mosey on over to the Caradron Overlord's Battle Tome, they have a unit called the Endrin Riggers, which are basically dwarfs with tiny blimp backpacks and carrying heavy weapons to float around and shoot people with. Swap the harpoon gun with a heavy bolter or some weird Votan heavy weapon, and I think these guys will be sick, fulfilling a role similar to that of the Tau Crisis suit, just flying in and breaking shit and then flying out. I think right now my biggest issue with Votan from a gameplay perspective is that they're a gunline army, but unlike the Tau or the Eldar, they're a very static gunline army. So having a unit that had a big gun and had the speed to get in quickly, but also didn't have the durability to, stay in that fight for very long once the first volley had been loosed, sounds like a good way to make them a bit more dynamic, forces them to move, to duck and weave, fade in and out, engage in more than just, standing in a straight line like it's the Napoleonic warfare, fucking Waterloo, and just pointing at things and being like, meh, judgment token. Like that's like that's it. You only get 2 judgment tokens now. Oh, Jesus Christ. So, as you may know, Xenos are my favorite part of 40k. Most of my immediate army projects right now are Xenos factions, and I like them because I think they're significantly more nuanced and riveting than whatever humanity has going on in this setting, where it's all very kind of monocultural by virtue of the fact that people don't rebel from the Imperium. Like, they don't. People fall to chaos and then betray the Imperium, but that's not the same thing, and also not a topic for this video. Regardless, Xenos are my favorite part of the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, and I'm glad they're starting to get some attention from GW. However, it's still not enough, in my opinion. More could still be done to bring Xenos in line with the rest of the game, and I think that they should do that, not just because I think they're cool, but also because it adds more variety to the 40k universe. Because when you conflate an entire galaxy's worth of conflict into nothing more than the overlong custody battle between Emps and Horus over who gets the kids, you make a 41st millennium that feels very small. Alright, that's going to be it for me today. Thank you a ton for watching. Expect more videos about 10th edition. I'm thinking of doing a guide series, actually. However, when this video goes live, I'll also be posting another Patreon poll to decide what the next video topic will be, with the theme being non-Warhammer themed videos. So go down to the box and give me $1 and you too can vote. These are the options. Okay, have a good day.